What's up, Theology Nerds? This is Trip, and today on the Theology Nerd Throwdown / Culturecast, you're going to get a crossover episode. That's right, 2 for 1sies, and this is part 1 of the live podcast at the Disciples of Christ. Generally, it's like a General Assembly, but generally, no idea, but it was the General Assembly. Anyway, we're going to talk to the one and only Sharon Watkins, the president, the Pope of the Disciples of Christ, even though they're a non-hierarchical church. We're going to talk to Rick Lowry, Hebrew Bible professor. We're going to talk to Sarah Lund, vice president of Christian Theological Seminary. And this whole extravaganza is sponsored by the one and only Phillips Theological Seminary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And the one and only Josh Linton was in his house with me, Christian, and Amy Pyatt in Columbus, Ohio. If that wasn't enough, Populis is bringing some live jams. Anyway, this is the first of 2 nights in a row because we sold out the first in 3 days. Because the thing is, when the Disciples of Christ go to Columbus, Ohio for a General Assembly, they said, could we bring the theological ruckus? Could we all, collectively, as ordained people representing congregations for the Disciples of Christ, bring our geek out and then all nerd out together? And I said, yes. And then they all got the tickets in 3 days. So we had to have a whole second night, and the second night's going to come next. But for now, first night. Anyway, before we jump into the podcast, I just want you to know the Phillips Theological Seminary sponsored it. That means they not only paid for this, the whole thing to be free, delivered right to your earbuds right now, but every 100 people that are in that piece, they bought them 2 beverages, a pint glass with a really sweet Culturecast logo on it, and rented the space, got a sound person. I mean, they basically are like saying to you, do you want to go to a really sweet theological education place and get your MDiv, get your master's in social justice, all that kind of junk? They're like, think about Phillips Theological Seminary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if that wasn't good enough, then just say, hey Phillips, we know you like homebrew. Do you like anything else? And they're like, in fact, we do. We like Subvert the Norm, which is an upcoming event in Springfield, Missouri, which is Drury University, and they're the featured sponsor. And the thing is, at Subvert the Norm, you're going to get to experience, like last time, Jack Caputo. I'm going to be there. Sarah Moody's going to be there. But some of the new speakers, and by that I mean one that touches my heart beyond all others, Just Catherine. That's right, JC is going to be in the house. Catherine Keller. So you need to come to Drury University November 5th to 7th at Subvert the Norm, sponsored by Phillips Theological Seminary. And when you sign up, I said, you want me to come? You want me to do the podcast? You want me to talk about my new book about Jesus? You want Jack to talk about his new book about a postmodern philosopher's quest to God? All Fortress Press books? You want us to do that? Well, that's great, but could you give a discount code to the Homebrewed Christianity people that's cheaper than all the other discounts? And they said, yes. And that means when you get your ticket, type in the code HBCSTN. HBC is short for Homebrewed Christianity. STN is short for Subvert the Norm. Add those 3 letters from 2 sides together, you get 6. Not for Satan, but for discounts. Boom. Anyway, then you'll get the cheapest ticket, and you'll come. You'll hang out with us. And in part 2 of this live extravaganza, you will see Phil Snyder be demolished by me in a postmodern philosophical preach-off, and recognize that part of us doing the podcast at Subvert the Norm involves him redeeming himself. That's right, Phil. I'm taunting you right now. And luckily, at Subvert the Norm, when we do the podcast, Jack Caputo is going to be there. So he could judge the POMO preach-off. Me, you, round 2. Bajika-choo! If that wasn't enough on November 4th, the day before it, you can spend the entire day with Jack and I. We're doing a Theology Nerd boot camp. This would be a non-violent boot camp. We're not training you to kill people or destroy things with bombs. We're going to do a Theology Nerd boot camp, and we're going to nerd out all day long. And the theme is when philosophers talk about God. Jack's going to talk about philosophers, how they see philosophy, where their philosophy connects to God, and what that means for religion. I'm going to talk about philosophers, how they see their philosophy around religion, God, what that means for theology. We're going to do it back and forth. We're going to do it in entertaining ways, and then we're going to collectively build out ideas with all the people present. Basically, only 30 people can go to it, so you should go ahead and sign up. If you do it right now, it's going to be like $30 cheaper than if you do it in 2 weeks. So you're welcome. That's right. I talked Jack into spending a whole day with you nerding out. I heard you say thank you. Manny, who is recording this right now, is crying, thinking about what it would be like to spend a day with Jack Caputo. And I'm saying, Manny, you're welcome. I will even record it and let you listen to it later as you edit it. I'm your friend. And I'm your friend too, you who is listening in your earbuds right now. So with your eyes closed, unless you're driving, prepare yourself for Subvert the Norm, Part 3. And just know, the JC is going to be in the house, just Catherine. Anyway, thank you for Phillips Theological Seminary, Christian and Amy for joining us, for Populis bringing the music, and all the guests that join. Buckle your theological safety belt. And remember, you should not only share this brew, you should share the CultureCast brew, the Homebrew Christianity brew, the Barrel Age podcast, and all that happens on homebrewedchristianity.com. Go there. You can click through and buy books of all the people you're about to hear talk about their books. You can buy the really sweet new EP by Populis. You're going to hear a song. And you're going to say to yourself, that is like Poppy Jam's rock that makes me want to go boop, 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 and always be happy. Why not get it? Put it in your earbuds. You're going to hear Amy and I talk about the fear of the week. Now, I just want you to know that I had a fear of the week, and Amy told me it was inappropriate to share in public. So if you want to ask me at some point what it was, that's fine. But my fear of the week was even scarier than hers. But it was pre-edited, because she values her public opinion about herself. All right, here we go. Live podcast, Columbus, Ohio. Disciples of Christ General Assembly, Part 1.
Welcome to the first ever joint Homebrewed Christianity and CultureCast live event.
All right, we are very glad that you are here. My name is Trip Fuller, and this is the best-looking pastor in the Disciples of Christ. Amy.
Why, thank you. Oh, you mean Amy.
Amy,
Yes.
yeah. She was reflecting off your head,
yes,
and I got confused.
That's understandable.
And Christian and Amy are two of the most awesome people, and they are the co-chaired drivers of the CultureCast train.
Dig the CultureCast.
Their train
We're going to have some CultureCast fans out there, right? All right.
So for those of you how many people have never listened to a podcast before?
What's a podcast?
And why the hell are you here?
I know, so no one raised their hand, so I can skip that part. Homebrewed Christianity podcast started in 2008 when I was associate minister at First Christian Church in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It was our pub group. And I decided that it would be more fun if the minister showed up and actually talked rather than monologue. But I really like monologuing. So I thought,
no.
What if I mailed them an MP3 of me talking to John Dominic Crossan, and then we just talked about it at the bar? And
what would you call that?
A podcast.
Oh.
Yeah. And the whole metaphor we came up with in our group back then was that Christianity should be homebrewed, because the wide mass popular version of Christianity is like beer that tastes like chilled piss. It only works in undergrad when you're held upside down having large amounts of it. Then you feel the Spirit. But it is actually possible that beer has flavor. And as we have known in all the different voices and people that we've experienced as part of the Disciples of Christ, there actually is a ton of different voices that have theology with rich flavor. And so I think we don't want to think for you. Let's think with you, give you the ingredients, and you can preach to the believer your theology all over the place.
And then 3 years ago, they invited us to come in and talk very superficially about theology and tell fart jokes, and thus the CultureCast was born.
Be honest, you were playing in the garage and I caught you. You were pretending to be on the radio, and I was like,
pretending?
You should call Trip because he can actually do something with this.
Well, yeah, okay. So our cassette tapes is recording on the cassette tapes. Is that kind of outdated, I guess? So yeah, they told me about this digital thing, and so yeah, ever since 3 years now, and we've built an empire, so to speak.
5 points.
So we have some like good news and maybe just other good news.
Yeah.
So one of the things I know some of you are probably here to hear Sharon Watkins, our General Minister and President, drop some knowledge bombs on you, right? At this point, she is stuck in an emergency after session. And so, she's doing this job she has of some ministeress, singer, or something of whatever. So she may or may not make it. But two very awesome things we have. We do still have the brilliant Dr. Rick Lowry to drop some knowledge on you.
That's right.
Yeah, whatever he said, I have no idea.
Genesis.
But yes.
He said Genesis.
Yes.
Heck yeah.
Phil Collins is the drummer.
Yes,
That
there
was
you go.
culture.
That's right. See, I'm all about the Peter Gabriel Genesis. I'm not so much about the Phil Collins Genesis. But and Sarah Lund, Vice President of CTS. Mrs. Lund, come on up. Dr. Lund.
Dr. Lund.
Dr. Lund. Let's give a big hand for Sarah Lund for coming in here.
Sarah.
What's crazy is her book, Blessed Are the Crazy, is completely sold out. And so I don't, if you wanted to buy it, you're going to have to go somewhere else. That's what I was told.
Online.
Well, what you do is you pull your phone out right now and you order it.
On Amazon.com.
Or
Chalice
whatever
Press.
ChalicePress.com.
Do they have an app?
Because the evil empire does not need more of your money.
ChalicePress.com.
We love you too, Steve Knight.
That's right. That's right. So, Chalice Press offer, Blessed Are the Crazy. So tell us basically what this book is about.
This book is the raw story of how mental illness has been woven into every fabric of my life and how I've kept that a secret from the church to fit the image that the church wanted me to be of the ideal pastor who had a perfect family. And so a lot of people I've discovered also have this false image that they project to fit into what is expected of them. And so I felt radically called to be honest about the mental illness in my family and in my own marriage, in the hopes that we can be honest as a church and be a safe space for that honesty. Because half the people in this room will experience a mental illness in your lifetime. But today, the church is not a safe space to admit that or to get help. And to me, that's a sin.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. I agree.
So now, wait. Sarah, here's the thing that Sarah will not tell you. Every time, Sarah and I are good friends. We go way back. And every time I've seen her at the assembly, she has this beautiful face of attentiveness and care. And someone is saying suicide or overdose or depression. So she is generating this very important conversation, but it's also a tremendous weight that you're carrying because that's a lot. That's a lot to put on one person who's finally got the courage to speak out.
So we need more people to do this work, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I've like started it, but now you all need to come and help.
Yes.
And wherever you are, continue this conversation. I was with about 50 youth this morning, and I just began to talk about it, and then I sat back, and I said, what do you all think? And one by one, people shared about their own parents who had bipolar depression, and the church does not know, and their parent is a pastor.
Yeah.
And they don't feel safe telling the church.
Yep.
And so the silence, the isolation that this young person felt, because they couldn't get any real support or nobody could really know who they were in the church. I mean, what is going on when the church is a place where we can't be real and authentic? And so I feel like it's a wake-up call to all of us. For teens ages 15 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death. And the church says we want to care about young people. Where are the young people? Well, where is the church talking about suicide prevention? Talking about the real issues of depression, talking about bullying of LGBTQ youth. Where are we? How can we step up, be bold, be honest, be real, and be that presence of light in the world. Mental health is one space where there's a desperate need, and I think we're equipped to do the work.
Yeah. Right on.
Books come from personal stories, and when you're working at the level of interacting with multiple congregations and ministers and now training ministers, they also come from a collection of stories you get vignettes on and little glimpses at. So I'm wondering, as someone who's brought this topic often as the first person to breach it, if there's a regular myth, lie, issue around mental illness in the church that keeps raising its head.
I would say that there's still a myth that mental illness is a spiritual disease, and there's this resistance to seeing it as a holistic issue. There's still a belief that, if you just love Jesus enough, you would be happy. Come on, just pray more, just read your Bible more, and you'll be healed. In some branches of the church, there are exorcisms, believing that mental illness is caused by demons, and how hurtful that is, how damaging that is, and so that it's a disease, a physical disease of the brain. And it's a real disease that can be treated in multiple ways. Prayer is one way, but it won't cure it. And so just to educate people, there's a lot that we still need to learn, and it begins by talking about it. I would go on to say that people who are in jails and prisons, that is the largest population of people being treated for mental illness. And there's something very messed up about that. I witnessed my cousin's execution. I was his spiritual advisor, and I heard his nurse say to him 30 minutes before he was executed, "Paul, can I give you a pill for your anxiety?" And he said, "No, I just want some chocolate cake." They didn't have chocolate cake. That was like his last request. But they had pills, so he wouldn't be worried. That's messed up.
Yeah.
So where is the church in that? Where is Christ? Christ is on death row. Christ is being executed. Christ is not getting the treatment and care and dignity that Christ deserves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the book is Blessed Are the Crazy. The author is Sarah Lund, and the publisher is Chalice Press. And definitely check that book out. It is something that the church has fallen woefully short on, and that we need to take on, not just accommodate, but actively take on as a justice issue that is endemic in our culture. So thank you for talking to us about that.
Thank you, Sarah.
If I was going to go to Subvert the Norm, it said to myself I wanted to nerd out extra. Would you happen to have Jack Caputo for a one-day When Philosophers Talk About God conference at your church?
It would be possible to have Jack Caputo at Brentwood Christian Church in Springfield, Missouri. The question is, who could host a conversation with Jack Caputo?
That's interesting, because tomorrow at the Hatchery booth, we're going to talk to him, and he's already ready to debate with me which 6 philosophers we're going to pick at the one-day event and who gets to play who. And I told him there's no chance I'm playing Aquinas, but if I do Derrida, it's in a French accent. De France! Derrida!
So, Subverting the Norm, where do they go to get information about this conference?
All right, fantastic. If you're in the house and you care about liberation theology, if you're in the house and you care about justice, if you're in the house and you care about equality, if you're in the house and you believe that the pursuit of justice is connected to the pursuit of God, all right, Subverting the Norm is the kind of place you want to be at. All right, it is where we bring together incredible thinkers who are grounded in theologies of justice, theologies of liberation, feminist theology, womanist theology, queer theologies. We bring them together, and thanks to the incredible sponsorships of some fantastic Disciples of Christ schools, higher education organizations, including Phillips Theological Seminary, the cost for making this happen is incredibly affordable. You will have a chance through GA to use a special code, which is that on the pieces of paper that are being passed around?
It's being handed around.
All right, fantastic. All right, if you use this code, STNGA, when you register at Subverting the Norm, you can register for this conference for $79.
What?
All right?
That's less than my bar tab.
Go to deal at half the price.
So go to subvertingthenorm.com. check out the lineup of speakers, because if you are passionate about justice, liberation, equality, those kinds of things, and you want to be in a room full of church leaders who are also passionate about those kinds of things, and you want to figure out not just what this means abstractly, like great things we think about, but rather what it means about your work on the ground as a pastor, building communities of justice, standing up for those who are oppressed, listening to voices from across the board so that we can better be the church. I encourage you to check out Subverting the Norm and use the code in order to be able to go there for a phenomenal deal.
Hey, everybody give it up for Homebrewed and Culture Cast putting this on tonight, yeah? Hey, is it all right if we do one more song for you guys real quick? We are called Populis from Columbus, Ohio. Sing that with us. Put the passenger locked it with a key to somewhere far away. Now it's time to live a new day. I know we said till the end we will never change. I cannot stay this way. No, we can't stay the same. And oh, give me something that inspires. Oh, let's come alive for the very first time. Paint the night, put a light of hope across the sky. See the world through new eyes. Let's come alive tonight. Sing it. Let's come alive tonight. This is our time. Oh, that's beautiful. This is our time. Took the cars up around on a Friday night. That's when I saw the light. I was like the dogs look behind. What is life? Can we live if we're not alive? I'm looking for a new life. Can't seem to open my eyes. And oh, give me something to believe in. Let's come alive for the very first time. Paint the night, put a light of hope across the sky. See the world through new eyes. Let's come alive tonight. Let's come alive tonight. Sing it. This is our time. Y'all feeling good tonight? Park Street, make some noise. Let's come alive for the very first time. Paint the night, put a light of hope across the sky. See the world through new eyes. Let's come alive tonight. Let's come alive tonight. See let's come alive for the very first time. Paint the night, put a light of hope across the sky. See the world through new eyes. Let's come alive tonight. Let's come alive Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to do the Theology Nerd Throwdown. There's a whole series of different podcasts at Homebrew Christianity. And you may or may not believe it, but the Theology Nerd Throwdown is when nerds throw down theologically. And that means that there's going to be a small segment of time where I get to ask Rick Lowry super nerdy questions. I've been preparing about Isaiah for the last 2 days.
All right.
Bring it.
And so why don't you do the introduction of...
You actually know Rick since how long? How long have you known Rick Lowry?
Since 1992.
Wow, that's a while.
Yeah. He was my Old Testament professor my freshman year in college.
And he introduced you to a pretty fancy pants saying, was it?
It's the only Hebrew I know.
What is it?
Tohu vabohu. Yes.
Let's all say it together now.
Ooh, that's fun.
Tohu vabohu. You have no idea what you just said. That was very nasty.
That was really...
Wash out your mouth right now. So let's get Dr. Rick Lowry up here to nerd out with his geek out.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
Theology Nerd Throwdown. Let's talk a little Old Testament, or Hebrew Bible, as it were.
Let him do it.
Okay, the B is a soft B.
Sorry.
So it's pronounced like a V, and it's tohu vavohu. Okay, it's actually 2-word phrase in Genesis 1, verse 2, where it says, when God began creating the sky and the earth, the world was, and it's usually translated formless void, but what it actually says in Hebrew is tohu vavohu. And what that really means is really, really shapeless, chaotic chaos.
Yeah.
Oh, like my dorm room in undergrad.
Yes, when God began creating, the world was out of control chaos. It was tohu vavohu. So what I would like for us to do as a group is I'd like for us to say it back to me. Amen. Because it's a very useful term for you to get to know.
It is.
So on the count of 3, it's tohu, Tohu, vavohu.
I totally screwed that up.
Okay, it's not tofu, it's tohu. Okay, so on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, tohu, vavohu. Oh, let's do it again. 1, 2, 3. Tohu, vavohu. We're not creedal, but we're Trinitarian. Let's do it a third time. Tohu, vavohu. Oh, that's
praise God.
good.
Oh, that's nice. I would have swore it translated that you should probably tip the bartenders really well because you're not even paying for the beers. If you don't tip them, God reinvents purgatory to stick you there. But it also could mean very chaotic a space in my dorm room. Or that which God hovered over to bring creation into being. All right, Rick. I was told, how much time do I actually get? Because I have 17 questions about 4 different texts from Isaiah.
Whoa.
You have 3.5 minutes.
Total?
No. Let's say 10.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, God.
All right. So ignore them. Just pretend you're with me. And I've been reading the book of Isaiah, and very early on, I got to a passage that got me a bit confused in Isaiah chapter 5, which is the parable of the vineyard.
Yep.
And if you're a liturgical preacher, it's coming up. You're welcome. Let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in it, in the midst of it, and he hewed out a wine vat in it. He expected to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem, people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done it? When I expected to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes. I read that and I thought to myself, John Calvin would not be a fan of this passage because it gives this story, this image where God is looking at the people of Israel saying, I showed up on my side of the covenant, I did my best, and now my wine tastes bad. So could you please fix my theology? Because for a second I thought God might be changed, impacted, and have like an actual genuine relationship with the people of Israel in history, as opposed to preserving divine perfection, which would obviously close God off from anything near historical relations.
Trip, just to make sure we're clear on this, this is a question and answer.
This was question 1 of 13 on the
47 parts?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to the question mark.
That was it.
He's been waiting for this his whole life.
If you can follow that, I'm amazed.
Okay, first, the wine stuff is a metaphor. Okay, so God is not really concerned about grapes and wine. It's a metaphor for the condition, the declining condition of the economy in ancient Judah. What has happened during the period of the monarchy and actually the imperial overlords that have come in and take over is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and a situation has arisen, as we see in a few verses later, where the wealthy are adding house to house and field to field. So you have a few gigantic, mansions, but most people are living in poverty and homelessness. What God says is, I planted a beautiful garden and I expected justice to come up.
Yeah.
But that's not what I got. And there's a really great pun in Hebrew in verse 7.
Well, everyone doesn't know that you just picked up your phone that has the Hebrew parallel text.
He's reading Hebrew right now.
Hashtag nerd out with your geek out right there.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes. And here's what it says in English. It says, for the vineyard of Yahweh, the Lord of hosts, is the house of Israel. The people of Judah are the planting. God planted, and then in Hebrew, the term is mishpat, which is justice. But what came up was mispach, which means bloodshed.
Oh.
And then
That's
said,
not the same
I
thing.
planted tzedakah, which means righteousness. But what came up was za'akah, which means an outcry. So God went to the shed, pulled out the seed to plant, but accidentally pulled out the wrong seed. Was looking for tzedakah, but pulled out za'akah. Was looking for mishpat, but pulled out mispach.
Amen.
So what has actually come up has been the opposite of what God intended, which is a world of abundance for all, where everybody has enough, not only to survive, but to thrive.
Preach.
Preach
that.
So
those of you in the back, he's dropping amazing wisdom up here. You're missing it.
He's dropping some bombs
So
on
basically
you.
what you're saying is we could teach 4 Hebrew words and have 2 parallelisms we could riff off of and exegete the Bible and the newspaper at the exact same time.
Yeah, that basically, what I just said is basically the message of the whole Bible.
The whole thing.
Amen.
Bring it.
All right, so the second one is the suffering servant songs. And I will just read my rather long little one question to myself, and then you pick one of the 4 issues I came up with because all of them keep me up at night. And
if Tripp says it's rather long, it's got to be at least 12 and a half minutes.
But I typed it.
Get comfortable.
So the suffering servant passage, they remain controversial, they remain impactful, thought-provoking, and even get sung during Handel's Messiah for Christians, and they remain sacred texts for Jews. So how are we to see the suffering servant figure in Isaiah in light of a few very troubling factors All four of them made me never want to preach it. Number one, the New Testament and the church's conviction that they all point toward and help interpret the meaning of Jesus' own suffering. Number two, the rampant anti-Semitism and supersessionism within the church, taking texts from another faith and claiming them for their own and calling them fulfilled. Third, the tension in the text between the servant being an individual or a community. And fourth, the lingering question around valorizing suffering and its connection to redemptive violence.
Tripp, this is a dissertation.
What was the middle thing?
Wow.
But we could pick any one.
No, I can work with that. That's
sure you
okay.
can.
I'm sure you can.
Hey, I got validated, and I'll just leave it right there. You can look at. You need to pick one.
Okay, the identity of the servant in this part of Isaiah is it shifts. Sometimes it seems to be an individual. Sometimes it seems to be Israel. A couple of times it's explicitly it's referring to Israel, and particularly Israel in Babylonian exile. So it's talking about the exile, and it's saying you weren't put into exile so much because of your own sins, but you are bearing the sins of the world. I mean, it's essentially an explanation after the event for the suffering that they have felt. And then sometimes it seems to be just an individual. I mean, but it shifts. But the thing about supersessionism and about use of this passage by subsequent communities of faith, Christians, the book of Isaiah itself offers us a kind of case study in the interpretation and reinterpretation of Scripture. Because those of you who have studied this in seminary or in college, or with you at Phillips Theological Seminary, Testament professor at Phillips University, know that the book of Isaiah, there actually are three parts. There's first Isaiah in the first 39 chapters, which are rooted in the experience of a prophet in Jerusalem in the late 700s BCE. Then there's a section we call second Isaiah, 40 through 55, which is where the servant songs come from. And second Isaiah is writing about 150 years later and taking the writings of first Isaiah and reinterpreting them for a new situation in Babylonian exile. Then third Isaiah comes along, chapters 56 to 66, and reinterprets second Isaiah for a new situation where they're building a new temple. They're now trying to figure out how do we come back to the land and reestablish our communities. So when Christian writers, many centuries later, take the text from first Isaiah or second Isaiah or third Isaiah and use them to try to explain this new situation they've encountered where their leader, Rabbi Jesus, has been executed by the Roman Empire, and yet they begin to experience him as resurrected from the dead and still alive in their midst. They go back and reread their scriptures, and just like second Isaiah did to first Isaiah, just like third Isaiah did to second Isaiah, Matthew and the other gospel writers, they do to the whole book of Isaiah. So it's kind of standing in a tradition, and it has to be understood as a tradition within Judaism. Because, of course, early Christians were thoroughly Jewish, as Jesus himself was thoroughly Jewish. So it's more an interpretation within the Jewish community and just part of this long-standing act of reinterpretation of older tradition.
All right. So one more question, and I just had to skip the whole bit on the suffering of God. So in
That's
Isaiah,
such a downer, man. We don't want to talk about suffering.
Jesus loved to quote Isaiah. I mean, in Gospel of Matthew, quotes Isaiah 19 different times. In the Gospel of Luke, I found out that Jesus plagiarized his first sermon, which you can't do at an ATS-accredited school. And you're not allowed just to read the Bible, cut a section out and say, I just did this. But Jesus did. So could you tell me how the context of Isaiah 61 and knowing Isaiah's own words could give us a better insight in understanding both of Isaiah and Jesus' appropriation of it in Luke chapter 4.
Yeah, in Luke chapter 4, when Jesus is given the scroll to read for his very first sermon. So this is the sermon that says, this is what my ministry is about. Jesus takes out the Isaiah scroll and he scrolls down to Isaiah 61 and he reads this. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives, the opening of the eyes to those who are blind, to proclaim the year of God's favor, the day of the vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to appoint to them who mourn in Zion a garland for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the mantle of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord. Oh, my wife just called me.
You should answer that.
Hang on.
That's more
I'll call you
important than
back,
the word of the Lord.
Amy, how many times would you like your voice to interrupt your husband's reading of Scripture?
I'm not Sharon Watkins.
Every freaking time.
Sharon Watkins.
Every time.
Okay, I gather that means she's just finished with her...
Come on,
finished.
Sharon. Come on, Sharon.
So, we need to know, do Black Lives Matter?
I've hung up
I guess
on
we'll
her,
find
so
out.
I don't know.
You hung up on her.
But let me just say that this passage from Isaiah 61 really for Christians is at the very heart of what it means to be disciples of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
It is to proclaim liberty. It is to proclaim the year of freedom for the oppressed and the poor, to stand up against injustice, and to pursue abundant life for all. This is what God calls us to do and to witness to as disciples of Jesus Christ.
Amen, brother. Amen.
How many of you guys listen to the Culture Cast? So you are familiar with Fear of the Week, I'm sure. Yes, sharks and pools. Pool sharks is the most popular answer, although I thought snails and wild goose was pretty awesome. So, Amy, what is your Fear of the Week?
Well, I read the New Yorker.
We skipped the song. I'll do it. Fear of the week, fear of the week. Amy gets freaking out because she gets fear in the middle of the week. It's a different thing each time, but I want to know what it is when I listen to the podcast, and it makes me excited because she's my favorite person on the Culture Cast. Fear of the week.
Now that's a freaking
amazing.
bumper.
I can't top that. My fear of the week is the New Yorker article on how Portland is going to slide into the ocean. Yes. Yes.
Have you guys seen this New Yorker article about how the entire Northwest coast is going to slide into the ocean?
We're screwed.
Like in the next 3 days?
I saw that. And I was looking at where it stops, and it's right around San Francisco. And it also said below it, sea level would rise significantly.
Yep.
So as the director of theology and the humanities at the Hatchery in Redondo Beach in Southern California, I said, when I did the math, we went from 3 blocks to the beach to 1.5.
Exactly.
So if you wanted to be a part of our region's new church planting partnership, you can be right next to the beach when Portland falls in.
Exactly. Right. So.
Thank God we're in Columbus.
Yeah. So. The Disciples Youth Ministry Network and Mr. Randy Cuss is here to tell you real quickly what DYMN is all about.
Yeah, hey, we started in 2007, and Disciples, we got the Disciples Youth Ministry Network people here. Diamond people.
There they are.
Has anybody ever been a youth minister?
Yes.
Yeah. Has anybody ever been a youth?
Yes.
Okay, good enough.
Into the mic, right into
Yeah, good enough. All right, so we have Disciples Youth Ministry Network, we provide professional continuing education for youth ministers and youth directors. We provide some networking, and we provide some serious relaxation time, some downtime together. What's that word? Sabbath. Yeah, that's it. We provide Sabbath for youth ministers. That's what we're about.
Bring it.
Awesome.
Randy Cuss, I want you to know he saved my life. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating at all. I was 19 and I decided to go rock climbing with Chuck tees and cut-off shorts.
Oh,
you
yeah,
remember this?
that's true.
You remember
Great
this?
idea.
I have preached this story.
Yeah. It's preachable. And so I just start climbing this giant mountain in Colorado.
This should be your fear of the week is cliffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And about halfway up, I decide to look down, which they say you're not supposed to do.
Don't do
It's
that.
in right there.
And I froze. I
did.
completely froze.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not moving. Go get a helicopter.
A helicopter. She asked them to get a helicopter to
I
get
thought
her
that
off the
was
side of this
reasonable.
cliff.
There's a
My wife,
solid
ladies
10
and gentlemen.
steps
It
before
was
you
like
call
talking
in a
somebody
helicopter.
down off the roof. Yeah,
Wow.
it was.
No, you don't need a helicopter if you have Randy Cuss.
Now, what she doesn't tell you is she was 7 feet off the ground.
Yeah, that's about right. No,
No.
it's
Little higher.
giant cliff, hundreds of feet.
Huge
It was
cliff.
way up.
Yes.
It was up.
It gets bigger every year.
So without Randy, we would not be married because Amy would still be hanging on the side
right.
of that
Oh,
cliff
yeah,
right
blame-
now.
No.
So
I
you
feel-
blame me? You blame me for everything that
I do. I blame you for the last. By the way, we did just have our 15th anniversary a few days ago.
Congratulations, Christian.
But I
Prayers of
think-
patience and perseverance of the saints.
I think you need to congratulate her. Actually, yeah.
You know,
Yes.
theologically and from a counseling perspective, it's always good to have someone to blame.
Yes, and I
Don't you think?
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I would be a splat mark
Yes.
if it was not for Randy Cuss.
So,
Okay.
Randy, where do they
So as we're
find?
triangulating,
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Miss Dr. Sharon Watkins.
All right.
We have a red Zinfandel right here waiting for you.
All right, there you go. I yield the mic to Sharon Watkins.
Yes.
Christian against Ron.
Well, but Randy, real quick. No, you're not off the hook yet. You got to tell us where we can find Disciples Youth Ministry
yeah.
Network.
Well, the easiest place really is just to find us on Facebook. Search for Disciples Youth Ministry Network there, and you'll find us. And whatever's the latest thing we got going, you'll find it there.
Probably more people have entered the ministry through youth programs than anything else I have heard of, including my wife. Right? And so this is a very critical thing that we need to support. And so I do strongly recommend, not simply because they supported this show, but please do hit up Randy Cuss. And he's also just a really fantastic guy. And he can answer any questions you
And
got.
about half of Discipledom is a former camper of mine.
That's right. Yes. And so thank you, Randy Cuss and Disciples Youth Ministry Network, for coming on. Sharon,
Hello.
I apologize for our very existence in your life right now.
Yeah, this is way past
This is ridiculous.
consciousness. So
You notice we did at least get you your husband says, now we'll find out how compatible you two really are, because he says you are a fan of Red Zinfandel,
yes.
and we have one for you right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one point? Do we get
Yes,
one point?
Rick gets 1 point, 1 marriage point for that. So, we should explain. Sharon, aside from being a friend of ours, is the general minister and president for Disciples. She has met with Barack Obama, the Pope. Not yet. Yes. No.
Not the new one.
Not that he doesn't return my calls either. I don't understand this.
Well,
What a
he's coming
punk.
to see it.
But yeah, well, we'll keep trying. He's more of a texter than he is a caller. But and one of the things I've admired the most recently about Sharon is I don't know how many of you are aware, but we have been planning our next General Assembly for Indianapolis, Indiana, and there's been a little issue there about marriage equality. You might have heard, and a little someone named Dr. Sharon Watkins said, you know what? You're not going to offer equality to people to marry who they love? We are happy to take our convention somewhere else. And to me, that is a church that I am proud to be a part of. So I thank you for that. And I thought that was very brave. But why don't you tell us real briefly what was kind of hanging you up tonight? Because I know there was an issue that was rather sensitive that people wanted to deliberate a little further.
Right, so we had an emergency resolution that came in according to our rules. If it couldn't have been into a resolution 180 days ago, then it might be an emergency resolution. And so this one had to do with the trauma of the shootings, the murders in Charleston, and the church burnings, the black church burnings that have happened since then. And so this resolution came to our floor, and the assembly said it's not strong enough. We want it to go to reference and council and want you to bring it back to us stronger. So that's what we were working on tonight.
And are you allowed to tell us how it ended up?
We formed a committee.
Oh, God. Church, ladies and gentlemen, a committee.
So, well, we heard from the people who wanted it sent, and we did, in fact, form a small drafting team that is going to be working late into the night or early in the morning or something to help us have some new language, new stronger language to bring to the floor, probably on Wednesday, because our committee will have to approve it first, and then we'll bring it to General Assembly.
And Disciples of Christ have a history of social justice activism from anti-racism to women's rights. We were one of the first denominations to ordain women, I believe.
We were very early.
I believe we are the first mainline denomination to have a female general minister and president. That's right. And so this continues this. I mean, you've represented that with the face-off with Indianapolis, and also with this as well.
Yeah, not so much the face-off with Indianapolis, because Indianapolis was always on board. Indianapolis has great human rights.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, so it was the state of Indiana?
It was the state, and most particularly our governor.
The governor. No. Hey now. Love of Jesus and all that stuff. Come on now. Well, okay, so enough for me. We actually have the two most... We know you're really tired, right?
Really good.
A little bit? And I'm sure your day starts as late as mine tomorrow, like noon, 1.
When you do that?
I don't know about you guys, but I'm totally sleeping in tomorrow.
There's lots about the Black Lives Matter resolution that was just passed or, still kind of, up in the air.
Yes, sent to committee.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about that.
Okay, so the Black Lives Matter resolution, there's actually two, and the Black Lives Matter resolution already passed. I mean, that's done. We passed that one today. Yeah. Because we know that if we can't say Black Lives Matter, we don't mean all lives matter. So the one we're working on is the one on how are we going to respond as disciples in a meaningful way to the desecration of Charleston and the black churches burning. So that's the one that we're going to bring back a little stronger, probably Wednesday, so the committee can do its work. But that's where we're at.
So I want to ask one question, and in this, I'm interested in someone your position when you're going into something like that. Like, we have smaller versions of that at our churches when we go into difficult meetings where your heart is there, your passion's there, and you are called by God to give dignity to each voice, even when it's hard to listen sometimes, and tears come when you listen. What kind of advice could you give to us for like a little prayer, a little guidance when you're going into places knowing that your position requires you to be attentive in ways that you wouldn't be if you weren't wearing that mantle? Because I've always been amazed at the dignity and integrity that you've had throughout your sermons.
I just fundamentally always believe there's another way to frame the question that gives more room for more people to stand together. So I'm always looking for that other way to frame the question that gives more space and more room. And then once we find that space and room, and then we really can have a conversation and either find out we don't disagree as much as we thought we did, or at least we can just hang in there with each other longer to try to get to some common ground.
Mm-hmm. So I know there are 3 1/4 scientists out there who still deny the fact that climate change is a reality. One of them is really, really tiny. But the reality is this is an issue that has maybe as much of a sense of urgency as anything else that we're dealing with. And aside from what Sarah Lund spoke about earlier, with mental health being a real challenge that we have underserved, I think climate change and responding to this collectively as the body of Christ is something we still have to take greater action with a sense of real immediacy. And a little birdie told me that maybe this was a passion of yours moving forward. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about that. And all of these folks here, of course, have zero impact on the environment. But, what might we take back to our respective congregations and communities that is your vision of what we need to take forward?
Well, I think, again, it's how can you reframe it? One thing that just amazes me is when I was growing up, all of the old people, all then, wanted to...
Wait a minute.
Right? Yes. All the people my age then wanted to wash all the dishes and didn't want to have anything disposable. And it was a conservation deal. So now, if we present it as a green thing, all of a sudden it's political. So I want to try to find the way to frame it again that allows, that is big enough that the ultimate goal of being gentle, walking gently on the earth works. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be a political issue. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a climate issue. There are lots of ways that people can come on board. We've got to do it, but we've got to find the ways to get people on board.
All right. That was awesome. So everyone give Sharon a hand as she stands up and moves away from a microphone, because she gets to sleep 4 hours before she takes charge of things again.
And Rick Lowry for coming along and being a good sport tonight as well. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
So before we do our little ending thing, which ends in group singing like every important activity that's run by people that used to be youth ministers, you all have smartphones or are a friend with someone who is smart enough to have it with them. If you could Google the phrase closing time semisonic lyrics, I feel like 1996 is about to call us, and I'm going to answer that junk, and y'all better answer it with me, because at this place, everyone's welcome at the table. And if you want to turn down the table of semisonic singing closing time at a moment like this, then, well, your life is impoverished. So go
Get
ahead,
the hell
Google.
out.
All right, so does everyone have their smartphones out?
I have mine.
Because semisonic is calling. Trey, if you could turn our karaoke moments on.
Two real quick things. So, tomorrow night, make sure to come back here to see Phil Snyder, Adam Phillips, Andy Goebel, and Andra Moran, as well as Trey Pearson, are all going to be a part of the show tomorrow night. Come check it out. Check out the Homebrewed Christianity Culture Cast on the Homebrewed Christianity site. And sing the shits.
Well, could you start it? Because I have no idea what measure we're at. Or Trey!
This song is dedicated to our super fan.
Can you wave when it's the measure we start? Because he plays the same three chords.
Dude, I'm trying to give props to Brian Collins, our super fan right here, who is possibly our biggest fan of all time.
Brian Collins!
So, if you're a bigger fan than him, beat the crap out of him and take the title. are